Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something I think we all crave a little more balance in our lives, and we're going deep on this one, folks.
No.
We're taking a deep dive into a podcast called Finding Balance, A Godly Life in a Chaotic World, to see what wisdom we can glean, whatever our personal beliefs.
Absolutely. We're going to unpack some practical tips and relatable struggles from this podcast, focusing on how you can apply these ideas to your own life, whether you're spiritually inclined or not.
Okay, so chapter 1 sets the foundation by talking about the importance of trust.
Yeah.
Specifically, trusting in God.
Right.
Now, I know that might not resonate with everyone, but stick with me.
Yeah.
What's interesting is how they connect this trust to the idea of letting go of control.
Right.
Which I think is something we can all relate to.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you can't control everything. And sometimes surrendering to that can actually bring more peace.
Right.
They quote Proverbs, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding." Think about how that applies to everyday life.
Yeah.
How often do you stress over things you can't change?
All the time.
Right.
And I think that's where having a source of strength outside yourself comes in, whether it's faith, a supportive community, or even just a deep connection to nature. The podcast emphasizes finding that refuge in times of stress.
They even share Psalm 46.1, which describes God as a very present help in trouble. Now, you might not believe in God, but imagine having that unwavering sense of support, that feeling that you're not alone.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? Where do you find strength when life throws curveballs?
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And speaking of strength, chapter 2 dives into the idea of aligning your life with what truly matters.
Yes.
The podcast focuses on God's purpose, but it's really about identifying your own values and making sure your actions reflect those priorities.
It's about living with intention, not just reacting to the chaos.
Right.
They talk about seeking first the things that truly matter, referencing Matthew 6.33, which says, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." Whether you interpret that literally or metaphorically, the message is clear.
Right.
Prioritize what's important to you.
I think that's such a crucial message in today's world where it's so easy to get swept away by the demands of work, social media, and just the constant hustle. So how do you seek first in your own life? What are the values that guide your choices?
That's a great question to consider.
Yeah.
And it leads perfectly into chapter 3, which is all about the power of rest and setting boundaries.
Okay.
This is something I think we often struggle with, especially in a culture that values busyness.
Totally. How many times have you felt guilty for taking a break?
Oh, yeah.
The podcast challenges that by emphasizing the biblical concept of Sabbath a day, dedicated to rest and rejuvenation.
Now, you might not observe this Sabbath, but think about it this way. Imagine dedicating time each week to intentionally recharge, whether it's through spending time in nature, pursuing a hobby, or simply disconnecting from the digital world.
It's like hitting the reset button on your mind and body.
Exactly.
And they don't stop there.
No.
They also talk about the importance of setting boundaries,
Yeah.
not as a way to be selfish,
Right.
but as an act of self-care.
They really emphasize that it's about stewardship of your time and energy.
Okay.
Saying no to things that drain you allows you to say yes to the things that truly matter. What resonates with you about this idea of rest and boundaries?
Yeah.
How can you realistically incorporate these practices into your life?
It's a challenge, but I think it's so important. Now get ready for this.
Okay.
Chapter 4 encourages us to let go of control.
Oh, no.
This is where things get a little paradoxical,
Okay.
but I think it's brilliant.
It is. The podcast talks about surrendering to a higher power.
Yeah.
Specifically surrendering to God's plan. But you can apply this to your own life, even if you're not religious.
Right.
It's about accepting that you can't control everything.
Yeah.
And finding peace in that acceptance.
It's like that saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes.
The podcast highlights Jeremiah 29.1, which says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end."
Wow.
Whether you believe in God or not, there's something incredibly comforting in that idea that there's a plan,
Right.
even when things feel chaotic.
It's about shifting your perspective from fear and worry to trust and hope.
Right.
And speaking of shifting perspectives, they follow this up with a chapter on cultivating gratitude.
Yeah.
which is like the antidote to stress and anxiety.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in the negative.
Yeah.
But focusing on what we do have, even the small things, can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Hmm.
Think about the simple things you're grateful for today. A warm cup of coffee, a sunny day, a kind word from a friend.
Yeah.
These little moments of gratitude can have a ripple effect on your overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you're grateful for?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Yeah.
And, this idea of gratitude really ties in nicely with the next chapter, which focuses on overcoming fear.
It does. The podcast emphasizes the power of faith and God's promises.
Right?
But again, you can take away a more universal message.
Yeah.
Think about the things that give you comfort and reassurance when you're feeling afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a favorite quote, a song, a memory, or even just the knowledge that you've overcome challenges in the past.
They share Isaiah 41:10, which says, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God."
Powerful.
It's a powerful reminder that you're not alone, even in the face of fear.
Right.
But they don't stop there.
No.
They also emphasize the importance of community as a source of strength and support.
That's where chapter 8 comes in, highlighting the idea that we're meant to navigate life's challenges together.
Right.
They reference Ecclesiastes 4.9-10, which talks about the benefits of having a companion, someone to lift you up when you fall.
It makes me think about the different communities we're part of, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, or even online groups.
Yeah.
Who are your go-to people when you need support or encouragement?
Mhm.
What does community mean to you?
It's a crucial question,
Yeah.
and it leads us perfectly into the practical side of finding balance.
Tet, welcome back to the deep dive. In part 1, we unpacked some powerful ideas from the podcast. Finding balance, a godly life in a chaotic world.
Yeah.
Like letting go of control, embracing rest, and cultivating gratitude. Are you ready to dive into part 2?
Absolutely. We're about to explore some even more personal and introspective concepts, starting with forgiveness in chapter 10.
Okay.
Sarah and Tom talk about letting go of resentment, not just towards others, but towards yourself as well.
It's interesting how they connect this to the idea of God's forgiveness.
Right.
They even share a verse from Ephesians, which says, "Be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you."
Yeah.
But even if you're not religious,
Right.
think about the weight that holding on to grudges can have.
Mhm.
Forgiveness, whether it's of yourself or someone else, can be incredibly liberating.
It's like releasing that heavy baggage you've been carrying.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth exploring.
Right.
What does forgiveness mean to you?
Mhm.
Have you experienced the transformative power of letting go?
It's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about the next chapter, which is all about living with intention.
Okay.
This resonates with me so much, especially in today's world, where it's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of activity.
Right. The podcast talks about making each moment count.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we can all strive for.
Mhm.
They reference Psalm 90.12, which says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom."
Right.
It's a beautiful reminder of how precious time is.
It doesn't have to be about grand gestures or accomplishing huge things. It can be as simple as being present in the everyday moments, savoring a cup of tea, or really listening when someone is talking to you.
Those small acts of mindfulness can make a big difference.
Right.
Now, the next chapter might seem a bit more specific to a religious context,
Okay.
but stick with me because the message is applicable to everyone.
Okay.
Chapter 12 is about the importance of worship,
Okay.
keeping God at the center of your life.
I'm curious to hear how they interpret that. What does worship mean in this context?
It's about finding those things that inspire awe and humility in you, those things that connect you to something bigger than yourself. Sarah and Tom use the analogy of kneeling, referencing Psalm 95.6, which says, "O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker."
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be literal. Think about what makes you feel a sense of reverence or wonder.
Yeah.
It could be nature art music, or even a deep connection with another human being.
That's a beautiful way to frame it.
Mhm.
It's about finding those things that lift you out of the everyday worries and connect you to something more profound.
Right.
It makes me think of the next chapter, which focuses on staying grounded in truth in a world that's full of conflicting messages.
Chapter 13 is so relevant right now with the constant barrage of information we're exposed to, especially online.
Right.
The podcast encourages us to develop that inner compass, to discern truth from falsehood and hold on to our values.
It's about being an active participant in shaping your own understanding of the world, rather than just passively absorbing whatever's thrown at you.
Right.
How do you stay grounded in what you believe in, especially when you're bombarded with so many different perspectives?
It's a constant process, and it requires critical thinking and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah.
They reference John 8:32, which says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." It's about seeking out knowledge, questioning assumptions, and forming your own informed opinions.
Right.
What strategies do you use to filter out the noise and stay focused on what's important?
It's a great question to ponder.
Yeah.
And speaking of filtering out the noise, chapter 14 is all about embracing simplicity.
Oh, yeah.
In a world that's constantly telling us to do more, have more, be more, this idea feels almost revolutionary.
It's about decluttering our lives, both physically and mentally, and creating space for what truly matters.
Right.
Sarah and Tom talk about simplifying our homes, our schedules, even our digital lives. They share a quote from Ecclesiastes that resonates with me. "Better is a handful with quietness than both a hands full with travail and vexation of spirit."
I love that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the importance of being intentional with our time, energy, and possessions.
Right.
Choosing quality over quantity experiences over material things. How do you embrace simplicity in your own life? What are some of the things you've let go of to create more space for what truly brings you joy?
It's an ongoing journey, and it looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
But the rewards are well worth the effort.
Right.
Now get ready for chapter 15, because it's all about taking those bold steps towards your calling, even when you can't see the whole path.
That sounds exciting. It's like embracing uncertainty and trusting the journey, right?
Exactly. The podcast emphasizes trusting in a higher power.
Yeah.
But again, this message can be applied to anyone, regardless of their beliefs.
Right.
It's about having faith in yourself, in your dreams,
Yeah.
and in the power of possibility.
They probably have a perfect verse to go with this, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians 5:7, which says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes we have to take that leap of faith, even when we can't see the whole staircase.
Right.
What does taking a leap of faith look like for you? Have you ever had an experience where you had to trust your intuition, even when things felt uncertain?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about the importance of community, which has been a recurring theme throughout this deep dive. We're not meant to go through life's challenges alone.
Right.
Having a supportive network of friends, family, or mentors can make all the difference.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And speaking of support, chapter 16 focuses on the power of prayer.
Okay.
Now, I know this might seem like a purely religious concept, but bear with me.
Okay.
Think about it in a broader sense.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What do they mean by prayer in this context?
It's about connecting with something greater than yourself, whether it's through traditional prayer, meditation, mindfulness, or even just taking time for quiet reflection. It's about finding that stillness amidst the chaos and creating space for inner peace.
I love that interpretation.
Yeah.
What verse do they use to illustrate this concept?
They highlight 1 Thessalonians 5:17, which says, "Pray without ceasing."
Right.
Now, you don't have to take this literally.
Yeah.
It's more about that continuous connection to something that nourishes your soul. It could be nature, art, music,
Yeah.
a loved one, anything that feeds your spirit and brings you a sense of peace and grounding.
It's about finding those practices and rituals that help you stay centered and connected.
Yeah.
And speaking of staying connected, chapter 17 talks about something I think we all struggle with, perfectionism.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
The podcast emphasizes embracing God's grace and letting go of the pressure to be perfect.
Right.
It's a reminder that we're all perfectly imperfect, and our flaws are part of what makes us unique and beautiful.
That's such an important message, especially in today's world where it's so easy to compare ourselves to others and feel like we're not enough.
They share a powerful verse from 2 Corinthians 12:9, which says, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for save. My strength is made perfect in weakness." It's a beautiful reminder that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and acceptance.
What does that mean to you? How can you apply this idea of embracing imperfection to your own life?
It's about letting go of the need to control everything and trusting that you're enough just as you are.
Right.
What are some of the ways you can practice self-compassion and celebrate your perfectly imperfect self?
These are great questions to ponder as we move into the final chapter of Finding Balance. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've journeyed through some powerful concepts from the podcast. Finding balance. A godly life in a chaotic world.
Yeah.
Exploring everything from trusting in something bigger than ourselves to letting go of perfectionism.
Right.
Are you ready to wrap things up with the final chapter?
Let's do it. Chapter 18 focuses on the ongoing journey of faith and finding balance.
Okay.
Sarah and Tom remind us that it's not about reaching a destination,
Right.
but about embracing the continuous process of growth and adjustment.
I appreciate that perspective. It takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We don't have to have it all figured out.
Right.
We just need to keep striving, keep learning, keep evolving. What resonated with you about this idea of balance as a journey?
It's a powerful reminder that there's no finish line.
Right.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
The podcast emphasizes taking action, not just listening to advice or reading inspiring verses. They highlight Philippians 4.13, which says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me.
Okay.
Now, even if you're not religious, think about that sense of inner strength, that resilience that allows you to face challenges head on.
It's about tapping into your own power, believing in your ability to overcome obstacles.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
We've talked a lot about the importance of community and support systems. Who are the people who help you stay grounded and motivated on your journey?
That's such a key question. And remember, finding balance isn't about making drastic changes overnight.
Right.
It's about those small, consistent steps that add up over time.
Yeah.
What's one tiny change you could make today to invite more balance into your life?
Maybe it's setting aside 5 minutes for meditation, calling a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or simply taking a walk in nature.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. What matters is that you're moving in the right direction.
Beautifully said as we wrap up this deep dive into finding balance. I hope you're walking away with not just knowledge,
Yeah.
but inspiration and a renewed sense of purpose.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these concepts. You remember, the pursuit of balance is an ongoing process, and we're all in this together. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.